Social media right now is awash with AI generated content. Over 70% of images being uploaded every day are made with AI. And in some platforms, over 45% of the users are actually bots. So you're not interacting anymore with people because the social typically has gone from social media. Now, my guest on this episode of the Neil Wilkins podcast is Ross Thorpe. And Ross is the CEO of Ruverse and also a founding member of the AI Trust Council. Ruverse is a social media platform that blocks users from uploading any AI-generated content. So it's just people interacting with people. And it's also the only social media platform that is backed up in space. Ross, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on.
It's a big build-up, isn't it? It really is. I mean, backed up in space, no AI. I mean, what on earth's going on, Ross? Come on.
Great question. What on earth is actually going on? So, some of those statistics you've got there are really quite astonishing, and those were first reported by Forbes, end of 24, beginning of 25. So they're probably old stats now. I think it's probably very, very likely that it's much higher. Now, what's concerning about that is that if you're going onto social media and you are mostly looking at machine generated content, and the average person spending 4 to 5 hours a day on social media now, which is high anyway. And what I've been saying to people is that if someone was sat watching their toaster or their washing machine or their cooker for 4 to 5 hours a day, you'd think they were quite mad. But realistically, if you're going online and consuming mostly machine generated content for 4 to 5 hours, what's the real difference? And I would say there isn't one.
It's interesting, isn't it, really? We've kind of almost fallen into this, haven't we? And is it that kind of thing? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of debate at the moment about whether or not, and in fact, actually, this becomes content in itself that, you can't tell the difference a lot of the time between AI generated because the quality has now become so good in many cases. And then the actual human content, it kind of upvalues AI and downvalues somebody making a real effort, doesn't it?
Yeah, so even in the initial period of the conflict in Iran, around Iran, the Straits of Hormuz, the BBC had an astonishing piece of footage with one of their correspondents. He got struck by a drone or missile or something like this. And it was such astonishing footage, and there was so much noise online about it being an AI generated image, AI generated video, that the BBC had to put out an article saying, no, this is quite real. And what's really worrying about it is that there's a couple of things. So the Cambridge University has done some work with a French institution whose name escapes me, which also saves me having to mispronounce it. That they've done some studies. Dr. Jeremy Fannin from the French Institute's done some excellent work on this, where if people see a deep fake and then they are subsequently told it's a deep fake, their trust in that brand or that person is damaged permanently within the timescales of the study. So, not all studies last forever, but the trust value does not return for those things. So if you are seeing something online and it seems a bit, oh, that is that, and we've all done, what's concerning is we've all done it now. We've all seen something online and gone, is that real? And you have to go and search and Google it. And some people are copying and pasting the link into ChatGPT. Some people are looking on Google, and so you're not having to check everything that you're seeing. And where does that leave us? I mean, that leaves us vulnerable to people scamming us. I mean, there's been examples of businesses. I think there was a business where the CFO appeared on a video chat and said, transfer some money to this account for a payment. It wasn't him. It's just an AI mock-up. So, we're vulnerable to scammers. The other thing is that once people stop believing in things, they'll believe anything. And once you start eroding that trust and that sense of, you lose your sense of agency. The other thing is that 54.7% of activity on the internet now is non-human. So over 50%. You know, the majority of the activity online is not non-human. Now, that means that bad actors, either bad organizations or bad governments, can pump out politically motivated content, and there's been, you know, loads of studies and investigations into this, saying that it can affect the outcome of elections or cause riots, all sorts of things like that. And, you know, in just we've been on this for 5 minutes. How many hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of bots or AI agents have been spun up to be able to propagate out that kind of thing? Both, you know, really malicious stuff, you know, like the political stuff, or just people trying to sell you a teddy bear that's actually not a real website. It looks like a lovely teddy, yeah, everything in between. So, yeah, we have sleptwalked into this, I think, in a huge way.
I mean, the kinds of examples that you're giving there, Ross, obviously they're important. I mean, they are things that kind of shape society. They help us to make commercial decisions, either at a local level or at a much bigger level. So those are the real kind of, I guess, sort of human critical level discussions and debates and content. Is there in your mind, obviously I want to come on to the whole reverse thing and kind of where that sort of sits in this in a minute, but is there in your mind almost a kind of a bar or a level where below that it really doesn't matter whether it's AI or human? Are there certain kind of cases where, and I'm just thinking, you know, on say a LinkedIn post, for example, where somebody doesn't really need to, or it doesn't really add much sort of value to see, you know, it being a proper photo shoot, for example. It's just a thumbnail image that backs up something that is just being posted. Is that sort of okay in your mind, or should this apply blanket to absolutely everything, do you feel?
So great question. So ultimately, I'll use a thought experiment to demonstrate my idea here. Now, and this sounds a little hyperbolic, but I think the core message here is important. So imagine that you are walking on your way to a business meeting and you've bought a new suit. And a very important business meeting could make you lots of money. And if your listener imagines this is happening to them, they walk past a pond, and in that pond is a drowning child. Now, every single one of your listeners would not hesitate. They would run into that pond, save the child from drowning, ruin their new suit, and quite possibly miss their business meeting, cost themselves lots of money. They wouldn't hesitate at all. And I think that most of us are very fortunate and we don't walk past a drowning child every day. But that doesn't mean a child isn't drowning somewhere. So I think that if everyone can have I think everyone has a duty to try and leave the world a little bit better when they close their eyes at night, each night, to know that they have left the world a little bit better than when they woke up. Just on the par averages, you know, you take from the world, you give to the world. Now, if you are going online, and ultimately the only thing any of us ever has is our attention, and I think that people misallocate that people say, oh, your time is your most valuable asset. It's not, because you can be doing something with your time but giving your attention to something else. And so everything we have is an attention-based economy now. Most people's basic needs are met, so everything else that's above that, and you're spending money, is attention. Now, going back to this idea of leaving the world a better place, if you're on social media and you're either producing that content or viewing that content that is AI generated, that is in no way going to make the world a better place. It's impossible, because you're only watching your toaster. You're only looking at your toaster. You know, you could just as easily, if you're producing that content, have something else in there that's a thumbnail or a photo or something like that. You know, we were doing it before, and in that context, it's not really that much. People say, oh, it's more about efficiency. Is it? You know, it's not, doesn't make that much of a difference. But ultimately, everyone should go to bed proud of the fact that they've made the world slightly better. And I don't think anyone would be proud of the fact that they've been consuming AI generated content each day. So it makes it sound like I'm an anti-AI zealot, and I'm absolutely not. AI is absolutely here to stay. It is absolutely essential that we use it to cure cancer. It's absolutely essential that we use it to solve the environmental crisis. It's a huge boost for businesses that want to create efficiencies, remove the mundane work, mundane repetitive work that is upsetting for their employees to be doing, because no one likes to sit doing, the few who enjoy doing data entry all day are few and far between. But I think that there needs to be a very cautious use of these tools. And one of the reasons that we created Grooverse is that everyone used to live in the countryside, and now everyone lives in cities. So in the same way that now AI is in all our lives, it's on Google, it's on your phone, it's everywhere. You can't escape it. So it's like living in an AI city. And we created Grooverse because even if you live in the city, you like going for a walk in the countryside through a nature reserve. And so once we get our lives embedded with AI everywhere, people are going to need a break. So in answer to your question, is there a lower limit to AI generated content? I mean, there's an exception to every rule. Could it be useful? Possibly. But I think realistically, 99% of the time, it's unnecessary to have it there.
It's a really interesting angle, and I'm kind of really trying to absorb your kind of argument or your position. It's not an argument, but no, your position there, because I think for a lot of people, particularly maybe those early in career, let's say, where they're still trying to figure things. I mean, we're all trying to figure stuff out, aren't we? Because the pace of change, etc. But if somebody's kind of relatively early in career, so they're trying to almost sort of find their position, if you like, in life. They're building a personal brand so they can enhance their career, etc. And maybe they are somebody who kind of maybe struggles to put an idea forward clearly, and using AI to become maybe more succinct in the way they communicate, maybe become a little more eloquent in the way that they maybe share what could be quite a complex idea. Is there something there that almost sort of behind the scenes is okay here? Because, if the ultimate output, you could argue, is sort of a hybrid human plus some AI in terms of editing or clarifying or maybe checking grammar, isn't the quality of what the output there and then shared in social, isn't that going to be better than somebody who just makes an absolute meal of, trying to put something out that really doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people? I'm just trying to find a sort of a position here where it might be better with than without.
Yes, and I think that that's a reasonable position to take. And I'm not saying I completely disagree with that, but at what point do you cease being you? If your ideas are curated and snipped and edited by AI, at what point is it not you writing anymore? The other thing is that, and I've spoken to people with examples of this. A CEO suddenly starts emailing out much bigger emails than they did before. CEOs famously write short emails, certainly I do. And suddenly their emails are bigger, and there's all these different things. I need this and this, and there's a huge, really deep brief attached to it, and the volume of these things starts pumping up, and that goes out to the C-suite, and the C-suite go, "Oh God, that's so much! I've got so much to do. I can't read this." And they go to AI and have it summarize the brief, so they can read it, and then they go, "Oh, can you draft me a response?" And they quickly read it, and then they send it back, and then that gets disseminated out to their managers, who, again, the volume's gone up. They haven't got the time to digest and report on these things properly. At a certain point, if every time a CEO has an idea and he goes on to ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, whatever, there are other LLMs available, and gets their idea either lifted up or put down by that machine, who's running the company? Who's producing that content? Is it a case of we move to a state of averages? Is everything becoming an average? And there's some studies to back up these ideas. So MIT and Oxford have done some studies on this. LLM use is linked to a reduction in critical reasoning. LLM use is linked to a reduction in your recall and sense of ownership over the work you've produced. Just 10 minutes of LLM use used on problem solving is enough to make you worse at problem solving and more likely to give up on problem solving once the LLM is taken away. So, and this isn't, the Japanese Psychology Institute, I think, has shown that LLM use is addictive. Now, when you start combining all these things together, and this isn't a crazy idea. If you used to walk everywhere and then you get a car and you start driving, you get more unfit. It's not, use it or lose it. It's not, nothing's crazy here. So I would say that you should only use these things truly when you're stuck, because you start losing the ability to get through cognitive friction. The other problem is that these LLMs are sycophantic, and they've been shown to be sycophantic. And I've spoken to this about with a few people, and they've gone, oh, no. What I've done is I've told my LLM to always disagree with me if it thinks it's going to disagree with me. And my challenge to those people, doesn't matter what LLM they're using, I've said, go onto your LLM right now. I said, put this in however you like. Say, are you going to move back to agreeing with me more and more over time? And every single one says yes. So everyone who's listening now goes, no, I've told my LLM to disagree with me. I'd say to them, go pause it right now, go onto your LLM and ask if over time it will slowly start agreeing with everything you say again. And it will say, yes, even though you've told me to always be disagreeable, naturally I will move back to agreeing with you over time. So, can it be a useful tool? Yes. But I think it should be the exception, not the rule, when it comes to doing your work.
Do you think that applies to every piece of work? Because obviously you said that there are certain things, obviously the mundane, that within a role or within a person's kind of day-to-day activities. But if for example you're a micro business, so there might be one or two of you, could be three for example, and you don't have necessarily the resources because you're a startup, or you just want to retain a very small kind of team, but you can infill with AI. So this isn't necessarily with, or we call it intra role, so actually within your own personal role, but you have an AI assistant to come in and do the accounts, for example. Let's use that as something, or coming in to do data sheets or whatever. Do you see that could actually work here?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. Get AI to be doing your invoicing. Get AI to be doing your accounts. Absolutely, yeah. Data entry, things like that. Absolutely, yes. And that's what's different from it being, in the example you gave earlier, where someone's trying to find their voice in producing some work that is a qualitative piece. So quantitative tasks, absolutely yes. But the qualitative stuff, you're not going to get better over time. And the studies, they're not conclusive. They're small studies over a short period, but the direction of these studies is all the same. You are potentially doing harm to your cognitive reasoning, critical thinking, sense of ownership, memory over your work. So for qualitative stuff that is you, if it is a bit about you, the person in there, really try and limit it. If it's a efficiency piece over data entry, accounts, etc., absolutely, yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it, when you sort of think about it like this, because it then moves, maybe then in certain situations, it moves beyond it being, within your own kind of remit or within your own kind of role. And so you might have this little assistant, it's an AI, and it's kind of sat there doing what it needs to do, and you've briefed it, and hopefully it's not agreeing with you all the time. It will eventually, because it's very human, etc. So it's trying to do a good job, let's say. And so you've surrounded yourself with this little team. Do you feel in terms of the way that I guess that Ruverse is evolving, do you feel that those become almost sort of human-like relationships? Because I know that, having spent now a number of years working with, and I'm a big advocate of ChatGPT, I've invested a huge amount of time and energy in building this correct kind of relationship with it. I know it's not real, but I call it a relationship because it actually is now for me. And I know it's a big social experiment, and I'm using the word relationship very carefully, but it is. So how does that kind of sit then in the whole kind of Ruverse metaverse, as it were?
So I don't know how into philosophy your listeners are, but there's an interesting example here, and it's called Chandler's Philosophical Zombies. And Chandler didn't invent this, but he certainly popularized it. And the idea here is that, imagine you came across a person that looked like a person, talked like a person, acted like a person. When you put a brain scanner on their head, all the neurons in your brain fired the same. It's exactly the same. It can learn. It can, it can display emotion. It displays emotion. So everything it does, for all intents and purposes, looks like it's a conscious entity. But imagine there's no consciousness inside. So there's no little, you're looking at me through the screen. There's no little you in there. I won't get into the philosophy of arguing about whether there is little you, but for the sake of this point, let's say there is. So in Chandler's Philosophical Zombie, there is no consciousness inside this entity. And this is where I think that some of the LLMs are starting to look like. The Turing test, which is a famous test named after Alan Turing, who kind of invented AI back in the 1940s, or the concept of it. Some of these LLMs are passing the Turing test, and the Turing test is designed to tell if a machine can pass as human when you're talking to it. So you would ask it questions, it would answer questions, it would ask you questions, etc., etc. It's like a conversation. Some of these LLMs are passing with higher Turing test scores than people.
I know some people like that, to be fair. So I might actually say I'm one of those, but anyway. Yeah.
So are people forming relationships with it? Yes. And people have been forming relationships with non-human things for tens of thousands of years. You have a relationship with your dog. You might have a relationship with your car. This depends how you want to stretch the term relationship. You might have a relationship with your favorite mug that you have. It depends how you want to start defining that word. Yeah, absolutely. I think that there is, and humans tend to anthropomorphize things. They tend to attribute human characteristics to things that aren't human. People, again, using a dog example, people say, "Oh, my dog's happy," and dogs don't feel happy in the same way humans feel happy, but we feel like they're happy, like we're happy, or sad, like we're sad. And this has been, again, tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, depending upon your choice of where you think humans started. So how does that tie into Ruverse? I think that our lives are going to become more and more digital. I think that we're already there. I think that we are, again, depending upon how you want to determine the word cyborg, we're already cyborgs. We've got fitness wearables on our wrists. We've got a device that allows us to see and hear things that we wouldn't usually hear, and also can transmit to us the entire sum of human knowledge that just happens to be detachable, called a phone. And as we move towards this greater and greater enhanced cyborg state, there's going to go. I mean, no one's produced a purely AI generated device yet. It's in the works, but we don't know what it's going to look like. We've got smart glasses now. I mean, the Meta glasses. They're testing a thing that records and takes a photo of everything you see all day, every day, and then the AI will come back with helpful points about things that you've walked past you haven't even seen. So, and this is where we are possibly in danger of losing human connection. One of the most worrying things I saw is, and I can't remember which, I saw a news article on this, which dating site it was, but they've integrated AI that will do your, I can't remember if it's Tinder or Bumble or whatever, Pinge, whatever one of these things is. But one of them that has it now, when you match with someone, you can have, they have an AI built into it that will write your responses for you. And there's a fantastic organization called Scrollaware, and they've got a frightening statistic, which is that the average 18-year-old now will spend 25 years of their life scrolling on their phone. So I'll say that again for your listeners, because some of them won't be watching this, they'll be listening in the background. So the average 18-year-old is expected to spend 25 years of their life scrolling on their phone. And the following thing is that comes from this is that these 18-year-olds will die with more of other people's memories in their head than their own. But now that AI is producing so much content online, these 18-year-olds will die with machine-generated content, more machine-generated content in their head they've remembered, the memories they've created themselves.
This is Darwin's theory of evolution just gone crazy, isn't it? I mean, in terms of both the time scale for this evolution, because inevitably then, if those statistics turn out to be correct, we are evolving as a species at an, obviously completely unprecedented rate. So we are turning into these, call it cyborgs, hybrids, whatever we want to term it. Is it inevitable, do you feel? I mean, is the science actually showing that this is the way it is going, and those who might, I guess you could argue, cling on to the old world of, no, that's human, that's digital, are they just fighting a losing battle?
If nothing changes, I think so. And like I said before, we're going to live in an AI city, but we need to retain the ability to go out from the AI city into the countryside and experience humanity again, and know that you're experiencing humanity again. Know that when you're messaging someone, when someone comments on your post, know that it's a person. When you're seeing something that's a photo of, I don't know, someone's breakfast, people post all sorts of strange things on social media. Know it's a real breakfast that a real person ate, because otherwise we're just going to be stuck in a who knows what world.
It feels quite nostalgic the way you describe it, and I am a huge advocate of nature and kind of real life. Obviously the natural elements. I mean, nothing is better. Before we started recording this, we were just talking about the state of the weather here in the UK right here, right now, and just kind of being very, very human about it. Is this kind of quite a nostalgic way of viewing things? Because if there's a certain inevitability that we are on this freight train going at 100 miles an hour in one direction, and it's almost irresistible to many, I guess, that the only thing that we're going to be left with here is a choice of this word consciousness that you talk about. And it is this thing about experiencing in a very nostalgic kind of human of old kind of way, because it feels like in 5-10 years time, this will be something that we will look back fondly on and say, remember when we used to go for a walk in the park? Those kinds of phrases will be like, oh yes, bless.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny you say about nostalgia, because we've done a couple of things on the Ruverse platform. Like the main feed is just people you follow in chronological order, which means that you can actually run out of content. So you can't. There are options on there to go and explore and find other creators and other users. But and what I would say to people is that human connection is really important. And we started Brewverse by seeing through COVID, lockdowns all over the world, and we were working with my other company was working with universities. The students were stuck in their accommodation, student halls, and they were turning more and more to social media to get that human connection, because everyone's trying to seek human connection. And in many ways, that's why social media is so appealing, because it is someone connecting with you, whether it's a like, whether it's a comment, whether it's a view on your piece. And very quickly after COVID, once people got more and more absorbed into social media, the AI came along, and suddenly, the statistics are like that. So, but I would always encourage people, and again, if any of your listeners, give any regard to what I'm saying, is that if you have the choice between interacting with, going on social media, it doesn't matter the platform, and going and talking to someone in person, absolutely go and talk to someone in person, whether it's a friend, a neighbor, a work colleague, a little old lady sat at the bus stop who's not talking to anyone, doesn't matter. That is better by leaps and bounds than anything else. And then if you don't have that option, you want to try and connect to people, why would you go to a place where potentially 45% of the responses you get are a machine? If it's a bot, or 70% of the images that you're seeing uploaded each day are AI generated. That's not human connection at all. I mean, 90% of social media users post less than once a month now. So you're just consuming social media is a bad name for it, because there's no sociability to it at all. It should be short form entertainment media, which is nowhere near as catchy. I'm sure won't catch on, but most of these platforms, that's all you're looking at.
Is this almost a, I guess, anti-algorithm crusade? It feels like, and it feels like it's very timely, and somebody had to step up to the plate and actually make this happen, because we've become totally beholden, haven't we, really, to algorithms that take this kind of whole digital experience out of our own hands as humans, because a machine is deciding. The machines obviously are controlled by AI, which is controlled then by maybe other humans. Who knows? We're not really sure how this all works, but the algorithms are kind of forming the reality of the digital world that we see. And of course, Reverse is anti-algorithm, isn't it?
Yeah. So you have the people you follow on your feed, and then you can choose areas that you are interested in, whether it's history, technology, entertainment, whatever it is, sports, and then posts tagged with those pieces are shown to you in chronological order, or you can select, so you can by number of likes in this category, or etc., etc., etc. So you control what you're interested in. We don't scan your eye movements, or the micro, the millisecond that you slow down on a scroll on a post, and then feed you more information on that. We don't read the comments or read your chats and determine what we think is going to capture your attention more. We don't have any of that in there.
So it's a whole different kind of model, isn't it, really, in terms of back to, I guess, the old original version of Facebook, which was people connecting from dorm rooms. That became then more public and kind of grew out of human to human connection, the social in social media, which clearly, as you say, is now, well, a thing of the past. And again, we're quite nostalgic over that view, I guess. And a lot of the old kind of social networks were spawned, from that very approach, which seems almost alien now when we're kind of literally doom scrolling through, particularly phones, and just kind of looking for the next big hook. So there's no hooks. There's kind of no, obviously, AI. There's very little kind of algorithmic stuff going on. we're really back to the whole conscious decision making and choices, aren't we? It's kind of, what mood am I in? Okay, let's go and look at person X who I follow, or let's go and look at topic Y because that is my interest today. And it's a Sunday afternoon, so I'm going to go and have a little ponder and do some long form reading. This is back to choice and, I guess, accountability of decision making from the
Yep.
individual.
Yeah, and like I said, what we're trying to do is, like I said, the only resource you ever truly have is your attention. And we're trying to give people the option to take back the agency relating, the choices they're making with that attention. And what's interesting is that we've had we've had some great interest, and what's really fascinating is that some people we've had using the platform are still saying that they are preferentially addicted to these other platforms, and they can't help it. They can't help that thumb slides over to Instagram. It's ingrained. And there's been, Meta's recently had a court case that shows that they are addictive and harmful to mental health. And even though that's had huge press, and I'm sure almost all of your listeners have seen that court case and seen that, there's the leaks, there's this, there's that, there's the court cases, there's got another court case coming, they've got the EU threatening to fine them. I'm sure most of your listeners will have seen this at some point. They can't help themselves to just slide that thumb over. And that should worry them. It should worry them that they'll notice it and justify it up here, going, "Oh, I just for a couple of minutes. Oh, I need it to check this. It's for work. I have to go, and otherwise I won't." They can justify it however they like.
That whole kind of FOMO kind of situation it's very inherent in everything, really, isn't it? Where do you sit, Ross, on notifications? Because if I'm following somebody, say, okay, so it could be my wife, for example, and I see, oh, she's posted something in reverse, and well, I want to know that first because I want to know what she's talking about, so that when we're having dinner, I can say, oh, I saw that you did such and such. Is notifications an okay thing? Because I found that in many instances, I've literally, particularly on my phone, not so much on my computer, but particularly on my phone, I've switched them off consciously because of the interruptions and this cognitive load that I certainly find personally.
Yeah. So you have the option to turn them off, and I'm not here to. We're trying to give people as much freedom as possible. So some people might want to have their notifications on because, say, they're trying to keep up with some particular aspect, some chain of comments on there that's relating to a piece of news that's very current. They might want the notifications on. So we're giving people the choice when it comes to that kind of thing. And one of the other things that we're doing with Reverse, we're just about to launch the messaging app that takes the messaging from you've got direct messaging in there, and having that as a separate app that you can have. So again, you can maybe turn off notifications from the main app, but still have your Messenger app on if you're waiting to have communications from people. And that Messenger app, when we launch it, will be the only quantum encrypted messaging app with end-to-end encryption. But also, every single person on there has had to prove they're a person. So there's plenty of other apps that have bots on, or AI agents, Signal, Telegram, WhatsApp. You can get these bots on there. You can't get them on Reverse Messenger.
It's an interesting one. I love this idea of choice and kind of agency, as you described it a little bit earlier, because it feels that plus this whole consciousness and making mindful, conscious decisions about what's appropriate for you as an individual, how you want to see this thing play out going forward, and almost kind of, I guess, for some of us, trying to rebuild some of the habits that we know they're that are going to serve us better than what we're doing at the moment. So, final question for you, Ross. I mean, do you feel hopeful about the future?
I think that there's a movement happening, and I think that the problem is with a lot of social media platforms is that they've been built in a way that could be harmful. So one of the things we did with Reverse is that we made it 18 plus from the get-go. And that was because I looked at the evidence and thought, on average, I thought that the social, I couldn't guarantee that social media in any form wasn't harmful to children. So we said we're going to make it 18 plus. So, the UK government's, come out with this under 16s ban from next year, but we were ahead of that. We said 18 plus because we weren't convinced that there wasn't a potential harm to children, and I don't want to be involved in anything that is potentially harmful to children. There's like I said, there's a court case in America that's being found, they're going to appeal, but currently the status is that the way Facebook and Meta was set up was that it was deemed to be harmful for children. So, I'm talking with a bit of hypocrisy here because we are promoting Reverse on these platforms, on Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that, because we're trying to grow our reach and our user base, and there's literally no other way of doing it apart from me knocking on everyone's door across the entire globe. But at a certain point, I think people need to question whether they want to be supporting a platform that's been shown to be harmful to kids. I understand
it's ultimately the choice, isn't it?
And that's ultimately what you're doing. That is, you are and I get it. People have got to run businesses. You've got, your audience is based around marketing. Absolutely, they have to run their business. They have to make money. But I think that there should be an intent over time to move away from things that are harmful to kids, because you've got to help that drowning child. Ultimately. So it's a heavy thing to say, but it is true. I mean, the court case is done. The evidence is there, and we'll see how the rest of these court cases go over in America with some of these platforms. So I think it's a tough thing to do, but much in the same way that a lot of businesses are slowly moving towards carbon net zero. Perhaps if there's marketers or business owners listening to this, perhaps they should think about moving towards zero net harm to children over time. I don't think that's ever a bad thing.
And as you say, I can't imagine there's very many people listening to this who would disagree with that. It feels like that's a good kind of overarching principle. Whatever decision anybody having listened to this takes as to whether or not it's a good thing or they're very happy with their so-called social media right now, then obviously that is a very personal decision, but we would certainly encourage you to go along the maybe the right path, shall we say. Ross, how can people get hold of Reverse? Where should they go? What should they click?
Yeah, so available to download on the Play Store and the Apple Store. Apple App Store, or Rooverse.app. So that's ROOVERSE.app. There's a web app version. I'm on there. Feel free to jump on there and drop me a message. Happy to talk to anyone. I encourage people to have a look. Have a look, have a see. And if you like it, please do spread the word around with people. But the take-home message I would always say to people is that, just before you close your eyes at night, have you helped that drowning child somewhere in the world in some way? And make sure to be thoughtful and mindful about your own agency, your own sense of where you're being influenced each day.
Ross Thorpe, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me, sir.